Thanks for joining us here at Weather Nation. We want to bring it out towards Ormond Beach, Florida, also Cocoa Beach, Florida. You can even see what's happening out in Cocoa Beach out there. We are dealing with intense rainfall. We're dealing with a lot of that extreme cloud cover happening out there as well. But just know that the seas are looking very, very rough.
We're still expecting some life-threatening conditions along the Florida coastline, but we do have some new information to share with you from the National Hurricane Center. Just moments ago, Hurricane Dorian has now weakened to a Category 2 hurricane, but there are some pros and cons with this latest update coming out of the National Hurricane Center. So the overall peak winds have weakened to 110 miles per hour, but there is a caveat. The actual wind field is growing in size. So despite the fact that the central structure of this storm is becoming a bit more ragged, we're actually going to start feeling the impacts wider and wider out from the center of the storm.
Exactly. So that means even if you're living in the western coast of Florida, you might be feeling some breezy conditions. We're definitely going to be seeing some rain on the western coast of Florida as well. Within these areas, you definitely want to stay safe over the next few days. Of course, we're watching areas along the east coast of Florida, eventually pushing up into the southeast.
So we've got several days still to go with the impacts of Dorian, and we'll continue to follow this system because it has finally started to show that northwest movement. It might be 2 miles per hour, but hard to believe that that's an improvement from the stagnant pattern that we saw yesterday. Here's a look from Viper radar at this storm. Of course, you can see that counterclockwise rotation. Just as a reminder, any low pressure system in the northern hemisphere rotates counterclockwise, whether it's a tropical system or just your typical snowstorm that we see across the continental U.S. It's all that counterclockwise rotation around a center of a low pressure. Now notice the eye of this system is starting to grow. It's starting to widen out a bit, and that's also why we're going to see the wind field with this particular storm get wider. That means that those tropical storm force winds are going to start to spread further out from the center, along with the hurricane force winds as well. So even though that we're talking about this system weakening to a Category 2, we can't let our guard down. There's still going to be a lot of impacts from this particular storm. You can see the rain bands that are moving all across Florida, even reaching out now towards places like Tampa. You're going to be seeing some of the rain as well. And even though these rain bands are moving, notice what happens. I've drawn the lines here, and they kind of just keep tracking over the same spot. So we could be dealing with flooding from just the rain bands before the bulk of the moisture gets closer to the Florida coastline. So a lot of different concerns here, and you can see down on the beaches, of course, we're really starting to push in a lot of water, and that's going to be one of the major concerns with this particular system will be the storm surge threats. So we've got this here, the current wind speeds. You can obviously see the circulation around the center of this storm, but notice how we're starting to get those winds picking up to about 20 to 25 miles per hour on the eastern shores of Florida. But in fact, in just the past 24 hours, we've seen peak winds already up to 40 miles per hour. That's tropical storm strength, folks, and we're only going to increase from there. And then, of course, with all of this flow moving onshore, either from the north or the northeast, it's kicking up our waves as well. As you can see in the video, we're going to continue to see these winds really stir up the ocean. It's going to be angry out there. We've currently got 8 to 13 foot seas along much of the east coast of Florida, but then notice closer out to the center of this storm, 24, 30 foot waves, and that's on top of any storm surge that we're going to see. And it's also going to be compounded by high tide later today. So we have a couple different things that are going to add together to really raise up the ocean levels as this system continues to move, again, slowly to the north and to the west. But notice how the bulk of the moisture here is on the northern side of this system. We'll get our drawing tool back here, folks. Notice how a lot of the moisture here is still offshore, but with that northwest movement, we're going to push more and more of that rain, and then of course also the winds and waves onshore. Again, we want to show you some of the latest statistics from Hurricane Dorian. This is per the latest update from the National Hurricane Center just a couple minutes ago. Shelley, 110 miles per hour is certainly an improvement from the 185 we saw earlier this week.
Definitely an improvement out there. Even earlier this morning, we were still looking at a Category 3 hurricane, but it has improved a little bit down to a Category 2. Like we mentioned, winds are still at 110 miles per hour. It's still a pretty strong storm out there, but nonetheless, it has weakened a little bit. So that definitely is some good news. You see, we can barely even see what's what's happening with the eye of the storm here. A lot of moisture still associated with these storms as well, with this storm as well. And it's going to be moving closer towards the Florida coast as we head throughout the remainder of our day here. Anywhere from South Carolina down towards southern areas of Florida, you are under some type of tropical alert. But we're going to focus on what's happening into Florida here, where we do have hurricane warnings in place, especially along the immediate coast here and off into the waters. For the more inland areas, you're going to be under tropical storm warnings, tropical storm watches in place for those regions here. So some of the key messages to take away from this: we're expecting some dangerous hurricane force winds, especially if you're under that hurricane warning. This is one of the main reasons why we do have those hurricane warnings in place. We are looking at life-threatening storm surge along the east coast here, maybe more towards the north of the coast here. Down towards the south, we're actually getting a little bit of that offshore flow, and that might help steer away that storm surge a little bit. Not as intense as what we were thinking before, but nonetheless, don't let your guard down just yet. We're still going to be looking at some flooding along the immediate coast. And then we have heavy rains that could lead to flash flooding, and that could also be life-threatening issues happening out there. So like I mentioned, storm surge alerts in place anywhere from Jacksonville all the way down towards Port St. Lucie, down towards West Palm Beach, down towards Boca as well. You are under a storm surge warning. We're going to be looking at the potential of 4 to 7 feet of that ocean water moving on land. If you're living in those low-lying areas along the coast here, definitely expect some flooding as we head throughout the remainder of the day here today and even into our Wednesday here. We'll take a look at the forecasted winds real quick, where you can see along the shore here, we're expected to see tropical storm force winds, category 1 force winds that could be possible. So we're looking at very breezy conditions. Maybe damage to homes could be possible out there as well. I definitely want to be mindful of that. And this will continue to move up along the coast as we head into early Wednesday morning. So areas like Jacksonville, southern areas of Georgia, you're looking to be impacted. We'll continue to update you here at Weather Nation what is happening with Hurricane Dorian. Don't go anywhere.